Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Westman, and this is the Keto Made Simple Podcast. Let's begin.
So tonight, it's my great pleasure to introduce my colleague in nutrition at the ALA membership, Amy Berger. How are you doing, Amy?
I'm well. How are you doing? Hey, everybody.
Doing great. And,
you're in a 2-for-1 tonight.
Well, what we're talking about tonight is so controversial, right, that we need to be on the same sheet of music, right? So if Amy's, giving responses, I want you to know that I'm dubbing here you to be the knowledge, be able to pass the knowledge, because what we'd like to do is take on probably the two things that give us the most, flack and controversy, because even in the keto community, there's disagreement. So, I'd like to start maybe this first half hour, talk about the vegetable oils and the seed oils. And then the next half, we'll talk about artificial sweeteners, kind of containing each discussion. And then we can take some questions. Let's see, if you can just write, all caps question, and we'll get to that as we go. Now, I do have to say that to preface all of this, I'm kind of a critic of research. And I'm not saying this to toot my horn. It's just that's my training. So, if Siskel and Ebert, or you're the critic of movies, you're trained to actually be a critic. And then you get, of course, credibility, and people follow what you say if you reflect what people like in movies. Well, let's go back to research. So I'm trained in what's called evidence-based medicine. And my first society I was part of, the Society of General Internal Medicine, is known as the critics of the medical world. So way back since 1990, that was my first class in what's known as evidence-based medicine today. It started as how to critically appraise the medical literature, and you learn how to take apart studies and tease them apart and see whether the conclusions match what they actually put in the paper. It can actually be that bad that the conclusion has nothing to do with what the data they presented. So anyway, so I'm going to be, and Amy as well, we are critics of research, not promoters or pushers of the research that someone does. And that you have to understand, as a researcher, part of your job is to promote or to advocate for your own research. And if a news outlet wants to talk to you about your research in mice, you're going to talk about your research in mice. And then the news outlet might even say, well, does this apply to humans? And the research is going to say, well, yes, it might. When I'm going to be the critic to say, not in humans, I'm really worried about this. I don't think we can apply, the keto metabolism in animals to humans, because humans are very different. So there's something called the hierarchy of clinical evidence. You can have an anecdote that's, Mr. Smith did a keto diet and is a bodybuilder. It worked for him, and now he's teaching everyone what he did. Well, that's okay. You want to be careful if he's doing it for a different purpose, that what he's teaching might not be for you. That's an anecdote, and then you can actually follow people over time, but it's not an experiment, and that's you have to be really careful about, because that's what we're talking about tonight. Really, is animal studies that really you can't say apply to humans, and then also human studies that aren't experiments. And so there are always different issues at play. They're called confounders or other factors that might be involved. And then the association, just because there might be a seed oil elevation in a population that's a little more at risk for heart attacks, for example, there's so many other things going on, and association doesn't mean causation. So that's kind of the two things. We want to look: is this a human study? No. Well, then don't. It really doesn't apply. just to be kind of super strict about it. And then the second thing is, was it just an association, or an association does not prove causation? So Amy, these are kind of the two major things I see when I'm looking at seed oil, vegetable oil research. There might be a study in vitro, meaning in a test tube, or a theory about oxidation or something in lab animals, and then association studies that really are not very convincing about anything, any harm of vegetable and seed oil. So actually that's kind of my conclusion about vegetable and seed oils. And yet then someone said, what about this video? And I went to watch this fellow. He was talking at Low Carb Down Under. He was a great speaker. I mean, I almost wanted to believe what he was saying. He very persuasive, and yet it was almost evangelical. And then when I really got to it, he didn't present any data. It was so you can be persuaded by the smooth tongue and the orator, but you really want to make sure there's data. So those are kind of the three things, I guess. But human studies, they have to be experiments, not association studies. And then you want to be careful to not be hoodwinked by a great speaker. Any other thoughts in general about these studies, Amy? And how to be careful?
I have a lot of thoughts, but it's kind of taking things in a different direction. I don't want to usurp your role, but like my thing with these oils is there's multiple things. Biochemically, looking at these oils, the reason there's a lot of pushback against them is because just their chemical structure is such that when you heat them or they're exposed to light or air, they oxidize, meaning chemical reactions happen to the fats in these oils. Certain reactions that don't happen to a fat that's more saturated, like lard or tallow, but every fat and oil is a mixture of fatty acids. So even beef, even bacon fat has some polyunsaturated, they call them PUFAs, has some polyunsaturated fats in them. There's nothing that even coconut oil has a teeny tiny bit. So these things are unavoidable. You can avoid seed oils, but you cannot avoid omega-6. I mean, grass-fed beef has some omega-6. I think, where do I even go with this? You're a doctor and you're a researcher. Like, you show me the data. For me, I'm more like, what do I tell someone to do that's going to get them the result I want to help them get? And you do this all the time too with patients. And I just feel like you have over 2 decades, I have like 9 years or so of experience helping people get the results they want. I don't know how many tens of thousands of pounds your patients have lost, reverse type 2 diabetes, reverse PCOS, all this stuff, with no emphasis on avoiding these oils. So, right, whatever may be true or false of these oils, we know that you can include them on a low-carb diet and still get the results you want. And then getting back to the research, I'm not denying maybe the rodent research does look bad. What we do not have, what has never been done, is research comparing 2 low-carb or ketogenic diets, one that's very, very low in these seed oils and one where nobody cares and they just eat their regular ranch dressing, their store-bought blue cheese, they're frying in canola oil, nobody cares. We've never put those head to head, so we don't know if it's better to leave them out or not. And going along that line, we also don't know if adding those oils in the context of somebody who has a low normal blood sugar, low normal insulin, a healthy person, versus including those oils in the diet of someone who's hyperglycemic and hyperinsulinemic, which is like over 50% of the US population right now. We just don't, and you say this all the time, we don't know if what applies in the regular people, if the same is true of people on a low-carb or ketogenic diet. Maybe it is, but maybe it's not. We don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, so great points. And I'm not persuaded by a biochemical oxidation. I'm just remember, tonight it was, lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my, it's like the fear mongering and trying to raise some fear so that we can sell you something, kind of like the Music Man and the "Oh, we got trouble" song. You're making something, so you have to have my product or so. So the years of using or not telling people to lower carbs without regard to the oils clearly works. So I think the burden of proof is on someone saying that it's a problem to say that what we do doesn't work or you can do better. And I have to say that I am kind of getting a little snobby in terms of, no, you have to, I'm being, well, how should I say, no, very particular. Someone has to show that it will improve what we're doing before I'll sign on to it. And yes, we need to be doing our own research too, but this isn't like one of the big things I'm going to do to start with. But at the level, so actually one of the talks that Dr. I think it's Kanobbd, K-N-O-B-D, who would talk for low carb down under, he said it was all dose response, dose. And then I'm thinking, even if you do have a vegetable oil that, or a salad dressing that was store bought, or you have something, it's such a small amount compared to what a normal American eats with all the processed foods, that maybe it's not an issue for our folks because they're not having much of it at all. And that little incremental reduction could have some benefit. But I have seen one paper or one poster where my teacher, Steve Finney, was arguing at the level of the membrane function and structure that you could alter the omega-6, omega-3 content in food of a rat or mouse, and then they biopsied membranes, and the membrane content was different, and therefore the function is different and it's bad. And, so you got to do a lot more research to take that from, science to human application. And yet, I was trained in how to do drug development and how to get a drug approved for FDA trials. And that's a high bar to reach. So the information about seed oils and vegetable oils is nowhere near that. So if a doctor is going to wait until you have like FDA clearance for a drug, I think I need to wait until I have a lot of evidence before I say something to my patients. Now, I also looked, a lot of the people saying these kinds of things are not taking care of patients. They're trying to find, I don't know, the best diet in the world. And one doctor, even at a meeting, he was not practicing physician, but he's a doctor, said everything causes inflammation, so I don't eat anything. I just fast. And of course, that's ridiculous because if you don't eat anything, you'll die. So there's, but Steve Finney says that you need some inflammation, otherwise we'd all be bleeding. So there's the Goldilocks effect. You need a little bit of inflammation, not too much, not too little. But yeah, so the vegetable seed oils. One of the best videos I saw was an interview that Brett Scher did at dietdoctor.com. So if you're watching and you really want a deep dive into the science, look for Diet Doctor, Dr. Brett Scher, S-H-E-R, and Google vegetable oils on YouTube. And he interviewed 3 or 4 different people, and one of the interviewees basically said, "It's a nothing. I don't even talk about it." And that's sort of my position. And then there are people in the middle of the road, but no one cited any high-level clinical research to say that vegetable oils and seed oils are a problem in humans. Now, I just want to leave that it's possible that we're all right. And this is often a solution when there's a lot of controversy. Then we're in a heated agreement, So it could be that you introduce seed oil, vegetable oils to a population, the entire Western culture, the processed food industry. And at that level, it might actually be a player for health, so that But when I looked at the studies themselves, these relative risks were about 1.2, 1.1. And the relative risk means how much risk there is when you look at the consumption of vegetable or seed oils to not consuming. And that's such a small, tiny change that most evidence-based medicine doctors don't think that it really is real. So often you can see what you want to see, and even though they're statistically significant, these relative risk or hazard ratios, depends on what study it is, are so small that even though the conclusion is it's statistically significant and you got to avoid seed oils, the practical reality is it's not clinically significant. So there's a big difference between statistical significance and clinical significance and relevance. So I don't worry about the vegetable seed oil issue at the consumption that we recommend, which is going to be very, very low, or you're going to get it from natural foods, natural sources.
So I have a lot more to say that I think is related more to like, okay, well, what does this mean for me when I'm actually sitting down at the dinner table? Like, what am I supposed to eat? And you kind of hinted at it in that just by virtue of adopting a low-carb diet, most people are going to decrease their omega-6 intake anyway, because we're not eating a lot of the processed packaged foods that contain it, like rich crackers. I mean, they're like that buttery feel, that's soybean oil. Oreo cookies, the cream, soybean oil. It's all soybean oil. So the cookies, crackers, pastries, all the frosting, the Duncan Hines, all the pre-baked goods, even like ice cream. It's fried foods at restaurants, which we're not ordering because they have breading or batter. So we're not eating any of that, the deep frying oil. So I see someone asking in the questions, what do we mean by seed oils? We're talking about liquid vegetable oils, things like cottonseed oil, soybean oil, corn oil, canola oil. Some people would include olive oil and avocado in this. I wouldn't, because those oils are primarily monounsaturated fat. We're talking about oils that are high in omega-6 fatty acids, and olive oil, and they're relatively low. And all the animal fats are relatively low. They do contain some, but like lard, tallow, butter, they're relatively low in this omega-6. So we're talking about those liquid oils, the Westman vegetable oil that you pour into the pan. So I think the main sources of this omega-6 or of these seed oils in keto, the way we do it, is going to be probably mayonnaise, salad dressing, maybe if you're buying the regular salad dressing from the store, and nuts and seeds for the people that eat nuts and seeds. That's going to be the main intake. So by avoiding all that other stuff, we're eating less omega-6 anyway. But two other points I want to make. The one is, like you were saying, what happens in a test tube or what happens in rats isn't necessarily what happens in humans. And I think this is true of these oils, but also because it kills me when people want to scare people away from charred meat, like blackened meat or barbecued meat that humans have been eating forever and ever, cooking over an open fire, right? The compounds that are supposedly harmful in the charred blackened meat, like they call them AGEs, advanced glycation end products. Well, we know those are harmful when they form in your blood vessels and in your tissues, which is not the same as eating a steak that has char on it. Ingesting it and it goes through your digestive tract is not the same thing as that biochemical reaction happening in your tissue. And I feel like that we could probably say the same about these oils. Now, maybe it's not the greatest thing to ingest these oxidized oils, but those chemical reactions are very different than those reactions happening in your body. And if people want to err on the side of caution and go low in those oils, you can. You don't have to. If you want to pay $7 a bottle for avocado oil salad dressing, go right ahead. But the final point I want to make is like, Durham is not exactly a wealthy place. I mean, there's pockets of wealthier, but like, you see a lot of very economically disadvantaged patients. And listen, people, if we set the bar, hey, not only do you have to stop eating bread and rice and potatoes and cereal and fruit and everything you've eaten for the last 50 years, you also are no longer able to eat your Ken's ranch dressing or your Kraft blue cheese or whatever that's $1.99 at Walmart. You now have to spend $8 for mayonnaise. That is a deal breaker. It is a deal breaker for some of the people who could benefit the most from a ketogenic diet, and they can benefit without avoiding those oils. Like that is putting up an unnecessary roadblock. People cannot afford that stuff.
So it recommending an unproven, unsubstantiated change that we want to minimize. We want to only focus on things that are really important, so that
again, like anyone watching, if you don't want to use those oils, don't use them. But we don't want to scare people out of even trying keto by saying they can't have them.
Right, and just to also show our position different than people, as you say, like Maria Emmerich, like Chris Sullivan. These are not physicians; they're PhDs or other type of researchers. And the MD PhD, it's interesting because MDs are very practical. They do things that have to work, or the patient doesn't come back to them. Or, well, I guess that's doctors often do things that don't have to work today, but they're supposed to do things that work. So that a PhD often will argue the number of angels that will fit on the head of a pin. They'll worry about things that are so minor in comparison that someone who doesn't have the clinical training and clinical experience won't know what's really, really important. So if all you want to do is teach, if someone says there's a possible harm, you say don't have it. And our program is the healthiest diet on earth in the world. Well, you can't say that without a study comparing what you're saying to a different type of diet. And that kind of just irks me, that more about the vegetarian vegans who say, this is the healthiest diet. Well, they've never compared it to a keto diet. And, they never will, because it would be like someone who believes a Christian saying, let's compare Christianity to Islam. I mean, it's no one's going to do that. Now the government might, or the VA might, some impartial sort of funding agency, but so you have to beware of a promoter of their own particular approach who will take very small levels of evidence, which to me is insignificant, but incorporate that into their program so that it becomes unattainable to other people, or only attainable to those who have a lot of money and those who can take the time to find the darn things. I mean, it's not have people looking, how do I find the almond flour and the avocado oil? And so we try to teach something that is flexible across many different grocery stores and platforms of how people can get their food and eat the food, so that we have a broader appeal and also applicability. I think there was a quote that, how would a doctor recommend sugar-free Jell-O? It's like, well, because I get people off of sugar.
No. Because it works.
Anyway, I think that was and I'm on to aspartame. But so that was the seed oil kind of thing. Were there any questions there?
No, just some comments that, people, they kind of agree. Like this, like Jenny has said, the hoity-toity attitude, it's going to turn people off, and you can't even,
Did you see that one? I'm 60. I want to be Amy when I grow up. That's great. Thanks, Amy, for your help, by the way. I don't say it publicly. Let's see. Jenny says, our admin Jenny says, coming from southeastern Indiana, my biggest pet peeve are keto gurus who make keto seem way too healthy. Yeah. Okay. That hoity-toity attitude. They need to start with there. Yeah. So we have to meet. So the other issue is that as a doctor, I took an oath, or I have a mission to help people who come to me, and if I have to meet them where they are, not just say go do this, and that is really part of the challenge we have in them implementing this with people, is to make it work in their own lifestyle. So great. I think maybe we can now go on to aspartame. Well,
The artificial sweeteners in general, right? Sucralose and saccharin. And
so what about this? People ask me all the time, Amy, that, well, the healthiest one is stevia because it's natural. So let's talk about non-sugar. I like to use the term non-sugar sweeteners because, stevia is not artificial.
right. But then you introduce the sugar alcohols too, which are actually very different. Those, so we may have to touch on that. But I just show people like, oh, we just got zapped. We are touching the third rail of keto nutrition right now, just so you all know. You're supposed to not touch it.
Not having grown up in where there's a subway, what does the third rail mean?
Oh, that's the one that's live. That's the one that the electricity flows through. I think that, if you touch it, you're going to be toast, literally.
Okay. Okay. I think that was the Billy Joel song. Not.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
So a lot of controversy, and the fear mongers, the people who think they're teaching the best diet on earth, don't have any artificial sweeteners, I think suffer from the lack of proof, like the vegetable oil fear mongers. There just isn't human data with randomized trials. Now, there might never be, which is a different issue, but these are association studies, and the ones I found, again, the odds ratios or relative risk are 1.5, 1.4. It's thought that you need a difference in association studies of at least 2 or 3 to make it sort of be clinically relevant. Smoking and lung cancer had an odds ratio of 10 and 14. 10 and 14, and we're talking 1.2, something in there. So again, the risk of, for cancer or these other serious medical issues of these non-sugar sweeteners just isn't there, even though you can say because it was statistically significant. See, it's significant. No, we want to make sure it's clinically significant. And even doctors don't know that. A lot of doctors don't. Remember, I'm a critic of doctors. So, in that field that tries to keep the other doctors at bay. Even so that in my field, we know that medical management of heart disease is as good as putting stents in, which is our field of cardiology. They put stents in the coronaries, but if you manage people medically, they do just as well. But those studies haven't persuaded the cardiologists to change their mentality of just going in and opening things. And so, but being the critic, back to the non-sugar sweeteners, I need them to get people off sugar, at least for a while. So I think they actually can perform a good function initially. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think I'm going to be the devil's advocate. I agree that they can be a transition. If you're drinking a 6-pack of soda, please switch to diet. Please drink a 6-pack of diet a day, or 1 or 2, like maybe not. But I don't even know that they have to be only a transition, because if you can include them the entire time and do fine, like I've been eating a low-carb diet for, 20 years now. I use Sweet and Low in my coffee every day. 1 pack of Sweet and Low, but I have that and it does not trigger cravings for more and more. I have that sweet coffee and I have no desire for anything else sweet. People have to personalize that. If having the mere taste of sweet triggers cravings all day long, that's an issue. But, for those of us in whom it doesn't, if you can have a little cup of Jell-O every night, not just as a transition, every night for 10 years, and it's fine, I don't know that it even needs to be just a transition,
Point if the amount is very low, kind of like even if you're having a vegetable oil, you're not having much of it. that there you're having that dose comparison of, well, the studies show if the rat has, 50 sodas a day, it has cancer. Well, you're having a fraction of that. And so in typical use, the dose is going to be really pretty low. And so I, thinking about the risks and all, I'm not concerned about consumption. And like you, even for a long period of time, the studies have been done for a long period of time, and they're very, very small associations, which is thought not to be enough to be a causal thing. So what I was going to switch.
Because your method, the entire time you've been doing this in your career, has been total carbs. So this does not allow people to subtract the carbs from the sugar alcohols, because all of the sugar alcohols are different. There's like 5 or 6 different kinds. Some of them do affect blood sugar and insulin more than others. So it's best to just don't even play that game. Don't subtract them at all. My thing is more like, people will say stevia spikes insulin or sucralose spikes blood sugar. And I say, compared to what? First of all, compared to what? Why don't you drink a full sugar Mountain Dew and then drink diet, and let's compare that CGM, number one. Number two, I don't mean to get all ranty, but when these, like a packet of Splenda or Sweet and Low or whatever is in other people's countries, these compounds are so ultra concentrated. It takes like this much to have 2 teaspoons of sugar. So in order to fill the packet, they fill it with maltodextrin or dextrose or something to fill it up. Otherwise, your packet's going to be practically empty. It's going to have 2 grains of sand in it, And I think people are alarmed about the maltodextrin and the dextrose. But to your point, if you're having 1 or 2, like when you're having a liquid, a soda or something, it's not even in there at all usually. And if you're having these packets, this is what you so belovedly call a carblet. We're talking a fraction of a gram of carbs in 1 pack of Splenda or 1 pack of Sweet and Low. Now, if you're having 84 packs a day, maybe that dextrose adds up. Maybe the carbs add up. 1 or 2 packs throughout the day in a coffee, like negligible stuff here. And again, compared to what? Compared to 4 sugar cubes? Like, come on, we're talking about people that have type 2 diabetes, for God's sake. Please have the Splenda instead.
Well, I'm still holding out for the study, a published study, or a very good anecdote of one of these non-sugar sweeteners raising an insulin level. There's one study that's actually among carb eaters, and it was not well controlled. So it wasn't in the context of a low carb diet. It was actually cited by Jason Funk as a reason that the sugar or the non-sugar sweeteners raise insulin, and it wasn't. The study was not used correctly to support what he said in the book. He gets a little loose with his citations. Like back in the day, Jackie Everstein said, "Well, Dr. Atkins said, go find a reference to support this statement." You can usually find a reference to support anything, but I'm not. I haven't seen insulin going up from these other types of sweeteners.
I've seen Jackie Eberstein put a pack of Splenda in an unsweetened iced tea. And if anyone on the planet knows how to do this properly, it's Jackie Eberstein. So if she's not afraid of Splenda.
I assume her talk is available in the hub if you haven't seen it, and we'll get her back again hopefully soon. But so there's.
I was just going to think it's girl. Go ahead.
You made reference to the method we use limits these other sweeteners because you include them in the carb counting, and that's something that's not thought of a lot. It's unlimited. All this. No, there is a limit, and now some new products. I don't know how to handle them yet, and I would love to. We were just starting before the pandemic to do some research locally where we'd have 20 people drink a product or eat a product, and we check their blood glucose and ketones, because these new keto cupcakes are out there, add oils to it, and they have all of the allulose in there that is, doesn't really, it doesn't impact the blood glucose, but we don't, I don't know if that's among those with diabetes or not. And I've tried to get back to the company. It's a dead end to ask to a large company. I think it's ConAgra or Duncan Hines that made these keto cupcakes that are out there. So until I see research on that or have a lot of patients using something, I say stay away from that stuff. Still total carbs, which means those cupcakes are not allowed. But our thinking may evolve over time, right? I just saw, I couldn't believe it, an interview of someone who said that there's going to be a ketone that you can drink that gets you inebriated like alcohol, but it doesn't have alcohol in it. I mean, it's like, so there's a new world of ketones and products and out there that you'll hear about, but just, wait, sit tight until we see data and carefully controlled studies or lots of people with experience before jumping on to something new. It's kind of like I used to say, you don't want to be the first one to use a drug that's put out there. You want to, even after it's FDA approved, there's what's called phase 4 marketing, where you go from thousands of people to millions of people, and sometimes they pick up problems that they couldn't pick up in the studies. So you want to wait till something's out for a while, and not, unless there's nothing else you can do. Now I want to be one of the first ones to try a new drug or a new keto product, for that matter.
I have seen some of the research on allulose, just because for one of my previous writing gigs, I had to write about, and I read several studies. It did look good, but I agree with you. Like, let's wait till a couple more million people have been using this for a while. But I was fairly impressed with sort of the lack of glycemic and insulin, and at least one or two of the studies were in diabetics, but I mean, limited numbers. We're still talking small numbers.
Well, I suppose, if let's say the ALA membership said, I'll do allulose for a month, and then there are other people, I'll do it, and actually then we flip a coin to see whether you do it or not. That's called randomization. What that does is equalizes all of these uncontrollable, even unmeasurable variables, so that we could do a mini test of something, of course, with permission, but it would take dozens of people to have products in the context of weight loss. That's the other thing. You might have a one dose study, it doesn't impact blood glucose, but what happens when you're using it with all the other kind of keto foods? That's what I really want to know, because there were some apple cider vinegar studies that weren't done with keto, and it cuts out the hunger so much. I had one gentleman who didn't eat any food, for weeks, and he thought apple cider vinegar was required to cut out his hunger, and short-term studies show that. But in the context of someone trying to lose weight, you have to advise and tell people to eat real foods, anyway, someone said, there is a study on apple cider vinegar, but it wasn't in the context of a keto diet.
That's part of it. This research has not been, just like with the seed oils, the limited research that has been done in humans is not in people on a low-carb or keto diet. But my thing, especially for our membership or anyone who's doing your method, a lot, even if, like, using allulose as just one example, even if the allulose itself isn't a problem, what are you going to eat it in? The keto ice cream, the keto brownie, the keto cookie. So all of a sudden you've got 74 grams of fat, and fat is not really unlimited if you want to lose weight on your program. So maybe like that keto ice cream isn't really doing you any favors, even if it has allulose in it or stevia. Like that's an issue, or like keto granola, which is a delicious, but it's loaded with nuts and seeds. So a quarter cup is going to be 300 calories, and it's going to be, 20 or 30 grams of fat. As fat, we're not afraid of it, but it's that we know that's one of the big roadblocks for weight loss.
I hope everyone's comfortable now with the term prescription strength versus over-the-counter strength, so that a lot of these products are being used by people who don't even need prescription strength keto. I mean, they might not even need keto. They might be insulin sensitive, but the keto diet works even if you're insulin sensitive. So just be careful introducing those things. So I think I touched on, but again, the idea that new things are coming out, and I'm hopeful that there will be things that we can introduce, but I want to systematically and gradually change it rather than diving into something new.
But I think it's just like the seed oils, for those people, if artificial sweeteners are not required, you don't have to use them. If you don't want to use them, don't use them. But let's not scare people away who depend on those to actually help them adhere to this long term. I don't think we need to be afraid of them.
Yeah. Let's see. Questions. Yeah. So that paleo kind of brought in that paleo primal, the super clean eating, and only, I think there's some bar out there that says 5 ingredients or something. You want to know everything that's on the label, and those are all kind of shortcuts to make sure that you're eating real food and not a lot of processed foods.
I that I want to address. Somebody's asking about like a sugar-free whipped cream or something, and this my answer is going to be towards sugar-free anything, because you see, like, people, I love those flavored non-dairy coffee creamers, or some of them are, they've got every flavor under the sun. They've got Girl Scout cookie flavor. I love that stuff. I just use regular cream, even the sugar-free stuff, because if you look at the label, corn syrup solids is like the second or third ingredient. Don't tell me that's sugar-free. You know what, doctor? Don't piss on my leg and tell me that it's raining. The labeling laws in the U.S. are that if it's less than 0.5 grams per serving, you can label it as 0. So maybe if you're using a teaspoon, it's 0. But if you're using 2 or 3 tablespoons of that stuff, multiple times a day, it adds up. And so my answer to all of that stuff is, like, when people say, can I have X? I don't know. Can you? Why don't you keep it for a month or so, see what happens? And if you're not happy with your results, cut it out and see what happens. But I don't trust those labels. When it says sugar-free and corn syrup solids or something is the second or third ingredient, I just don't trust it. I don't trust. That doesn't mean you can't have it. You might be able to have it and still get the results you want, but it's iffy.
Patricia says, for me, the sugar-free Jell-O helped me transition. I needed to stop, though, because it did trigger cravings. And then listening to Dr. Tarman was extremely helpful, and I weaned off most artificial sweeteners. Yeah. So it's an individual decision, I think, partly based on your metabolism, whether it's an addiction going on and whether you can limit it over time. Yeah, I have to say, the longer you do this, the easier it gets. So, but the first 6 months, definitely, maybe even the first few holidays you go through, you just want to be really careful, because I've seen people backslide or get off, fall off the wagon, or whatever you want to say it. They start eating carbs again, and then they just can't control it. I'm looking forward to Dr. Tarman's course that she's doing with Adapt Your Life. I have already learned a lot from her book called Food Junkies. Yeah, Food Junkies. It's a great book. A lot of anecdotes of people's descriptions. So, excuse me. Thanks too. Sorry.
To you.
Well, I think so. Did we, I hope, dispel your concerns about vegetable and seed oils, that the level consumed on this kind of program is trivial, is probably not a problem. And then the non-sugar sweeteners, don't have too many of them at the level we consume them, probably not a problem. Although you don't need them. I'm not aware of any studies that show if you have sucralose, your mental function is better, for example.
I mean, they're not health foods. We're not like encouraging you like, oh, but just have them if you want them, but they're not, they're not required, but they're not prohibited. Just like avocado, just like hey, if you don't like chicken, don't eat chicken, but don't scare that person away from eating chicken. It's perfectly fine. It's on the list. If you have an anaphylactic reaction to fish, don't eat fish just because it's on the list.
So Robin asked, so I might not have mentioned it yet, but Dr. Tarman is writing a course that will be available through Adapt Your Life Academy on food addiction. In fact, it might have been, maybe, I think it's okay.
We've mentioned it before. It's not a shock.
And you guys get the information first. So, and I also wanted to say that I'm going to be using these lives within the membership to get questions and then to hone down the Adapt Your Life, Learn with Dr. Westman videos. So you're really helping me with input, with comments and with questions so that we can give information, out there to the rest of the world for free through Adapt Your Life YouTube channel. And so I really appreciate the chance to, you get the information first and help hone it down. And then we'll, teach other people and spread the word. And I think it'll be a better product, better video, and more answering more of the questions that are of the moment. So I might be stuck with someone in Durham, a certain way of thinking, and it's great to get feedback from many different places.
We do have one. Somebody's asking about. I use stevia and just looked at the package, which says two carbs per pack. So the carbs add up if using too much and can have so. But I wonder, Lynn, like what is it? Is it maltodextrin? Is it dextrose? There's something else with that stevia that's accounting for those carbs. I would want to know what that is. You might be able to. I mean, if you're having multiple, like many packs a day, yeah, one or two probably okay. But sometimes like my Sweet and Low in my coffee, usually half a pack is enough. Sometimes I can use one pack for two coffees. So you might want to try to just kind of titrate it down a little bit and see if that's still sweet enough for you.
Well, I just figured out that I can press here and get the question on the screen.
Oh, look at that.
Also, is it you friendly? Oh, right. Keto.
That's a good, yeah.
Oh, I like this one. Sabet said, throwing out the good in search of the perfect.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of the influencers are doing that. And, they get away with it because there will be a certain number of people who will follow. If you sell one kind of car, you can have a business, right? There are a lot of different kinds of cars. There's a lot of brands of keto, and there's non-prescription, there's prescription strength, there's the super clean, but it's not necessary to do all of that.
Debbie brings up a good point. Debbie's kind of confirming what I was saying. Like if you're stalled or you're having trouble getting the results you want, well, is it the Splenda or is it the fact that you're putting Splenda in your keto brownies and your keto cookies and your keto ice cream? Is it the Splenda or is it the other stuff? And
yeah, great. Well, I think we exhausted the question, but if you have a question comes up, please ask us in the membership. And again, it's what a thrill to be able to help you on your journey, and what a great privilege is to be able to help you and help us grow this community. We're of course open now to have a new cohort come in. So over the next week or two, we'll have the class opening again, a welcome ceremony and all. So
I'm bracing. I have to like mentally prepare for a new.
Yeah, no, it's what great fun. And, I tell it, we've helped people lose tons of weight. Yeah, tons. So, anyway, again, thanks, Amy, for being on tonight and helping with the membership. Of course, Kyle and Jenny, who are on tonight as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.
It was just another moment of, a moment of thinking about all of the health providers and researchers, all that have done so much, including Dr. Sarah Hallberg, who, has gone on from this world, but her legacy remains. And if you never watched her TED Talk, oh my gosh, it's just,
I think I posted it, and those people can find it in the membership somewhere. Yeah,
it's phenomenal, and people are just on Twitter saying, I watched that TED Talk, changed my life. Watched that, changed my life. So that's what we're here for, to help you and give you resources that you need. Let us know how we can be of better service. Well, that's it. Till next time. Thanks, Amy.
Good to see you, everybody. Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and check out adaptyourlifeacademy.com.